Before we start this episode, I just wanted to drop in a message because when I was editing it, I suddenly realised we don't really touch on the Neil Gaiman controversy. Ultimately, this podcast isn't about the Neil Gaiman controversy, and much better people than I or my guests will have things to say on the Neil Gaiman controversy. But just in case you were wondering my stance on it, fuck Neil Gaiman.
He stumbled into a parallel London.
Why did you have to come here?
And now he must brave its most dangerous neighborhood.
Knightsbridge.
Knightsbridge.
A bodyguard can protect his back, but who'll guard his dreams?
Now is the time to be afraid of the dark.
Neverwhere. Urban fantasy. Thursday at 9 on BBC Two.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome back to Doctor Who Too Hot for TV. We're the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. And again today, looking at all the things that replaced Doctor Who in the 90s. Once again, I'm joined by my brother Jackson. Jackson, say hello.
Hello, hello.
And I'm also joined by Pete Lambert. Pete Lambert, you say hello too.
Hello, hello, hello. Yes. Great to be here again.
It's wonderful to have you here, and we are here to talk about Neverwhere, which broadcast from the 11th of September to the 17th of October in 1996. Now, did we see this at the time, or did we see this later? Let's come to you first, Jackson.
I think I've got really vague memories of it. I remember rewatching it when I was probably about 12 via a torrent.
Ooh.
Back when I used to torrent as a child torrenter on the LimeWire.
No wonder you turned out this way.
But I would have only have done that because you, Dylan, aka the enabler, you must have introduced me to it in some way. And I think maybe I saw just an episode or two, but it would have been intruding on you watching it.
So I saw it at the time, and I definitely recorded it off television. Somehow, whether I'd read it in the Radio Times or our mom and dad had turned around and gone, this will be right up your street, you must watch it, or I saw a trailer, I don't know. So I recorded it off the TV, so you may have found it in some box somewhere. I know for a fact it wasn't all recorded on the same video, it was like spread out, so the chances are 3 years later or something, you might have been watching an episode of Blake 7 and there'd been episode 4 of this on there or something like that.
Seamless.
What about you, Pete?
So I watched it when it went out. I don't think I saw it all, and I don't think I was enough into it to bother setting a video for it. But I was interested in Neil Gaiman because I'm a big Tori Amos fan, and him and her were very much besties at that point. He was cropping up in all of her songs. Well, not all of her songs. The song on each album generally mentions him. Less so these days, and we're gonna have to go there at some point, aren't we? But yeah, we're here to talk about the thing. So I was Gaiman curious. I knew he was cool. I knew he was cooler than me. It's pre-Buffy as well, so you're not used to cult TV being cool. And the BBC, it's fascinating that the BBC had a spot for it. But yeah, so I saw most of it when it went out, and then I must have bought the VHS to catch all up on it all, and that eventually appeared on DVD.
It's a weird choice, I think, for BBC Two, as you sort of hinted at there, Pete, because while cult TV or genre TV is very much alive, it's sort of dressed up in the Saturday night slot as a drama with a little bit of sci-fi, as we've seen with Crime Traveller and Bugs. But this is balls deep fantasy, right?
Yeah.
This is for people who watch This is what people who watch the Late Show on BBC Two think science fiction ought to be like. It's like, yeah, it's Guardian coded, rather than we're doing James Bond on the cheap with a little bit of timey magic. Yeah, it's not that. It is that period where cult TV was a thing that the BBC was aware sort of existed and maybe should do some of, but didn't really like. Can't we just keep repeating The Prisoner? No, we don't own that anymore.
I suppose BBC Two was the place where these things were repeated, but they wouldn't necessarily make them. A lot of people talk about this as being the Doctor Who of 1996, apart from that bit of Doctor Who that we had in 1996.
Yeah, I literally said that to someone today. We're talking about this. I was like, it's exactly what Doctor Who would have been like in 96. And then I realised what I just said, and they didn't, so I was fine. It's great. That's the advantage of talking to people who aren't immersed.
Normal people don't know.
Normal people don't. pick you up on things like that. Yeah.
It's had that reputation for a long time, but Jackson, would you say the reputation is correct?
I think it's the box of delights of the 90s because it is firmly more about fantasy. Although having said that, I think what also distinguishes it is that even though it's playing with the fantasy genre, which is kind of family orientated and children orientated genre, it's still got this edge of kind of violence to it. So it's like the box of delights if someone, had their fingers chopped off, every couple of scenes, or someone got garroted with cheese wire.
That sort of happens in Box of Delights, right?
No, they just go really big or they go really small.
What about for you, Pete? Is it filling a Doctor Who shaped hole?
I think it is, and it's funny. It's almost like it's weird because it's like Doctor Who if Doctor Who had been influenced by Buffy before Buffy came along to influence Doctor Who, so that it could be like Buffy. It's kind of like there's so much cultural stuff brewing in the mid-90s that you could, if you got the dates wrong, you could convince yourself that it was an influence on things that hadn't happened. That you could get the chronology wrong because there's stuff with this kind of vibe going on. And finding that it's fascinating that it found this place. It was definitely a BBC Two or a Channel 4 show. Like, when was Ultraviolet? Was that around the same time?
I think that's a little later, isn't it?
That's a bit later, isn't it? Yeah, that's late 90s, I think. Yeah. It's finding new things to do with this genre that's sort of cool, but we're at the BBC and we do everything. It's almost all on location, isn't it? But it's all video. So it feels like it really has got that Doctor Who season 32 imaginary vibe to it in a way that, yeah. But that's it, like this and Crime Traveller. Doctor Who needs to be both of those at the same time. It needs both of those audiences in the 90s. And neither one of them could have done it. Neither one of these could have launched a 15-year revival of Doctor Who.
No.
But Doctor Who, if you'd said this is the new Doctor Who, and Doctor Who fans sit down and watch a show starring a guy who clearly was born to play Doctor Who, and everyone was saying it from the moment it went out, this guy's definitely going to be Doctor Who, and whatever happened to Patterson Joseph.
Indeed. He did a cameo in Bad Wolf, and that was it.
But wasn't he on a shortlist? Is there a rumour that he was one of the ones who...
He was definitely on the shortlist. He said in an interview years later something along the lines of, I came close, but it didn't happen for me. I was just happy to be touched by that little bit of Doctor Who magic. So they reportedly offered the role of the 11th Doctor to a black actor that wasn't Patterson Joseph. But I imagine if there was a list of, they said this about Eccleston, there were 3 people that could have played the role. I imagine Patterson Joseph was one of the 3 for number 11.
Could have been about that, yeah, right from the off. Because, I think it was in my head. I'd heard there's the Moffat story that one of the Doctor, someone else had it in the bag, and then this other person walks in and steals it.
They always say that, though, don't they?
They always say that, don't they? That's why I was trying to pin it down to which Doctor it was said about. It's said about all of them, yeah.
So the reason we know there was a black actor who turned down the 11th Doctor is because Neil Gaiman said it in an interview. He said they went for somebody else, but they didn't want to do it because it was too much of a big commitment, and it was a black actor. So.
And maybe did someone then say, was it Patterson Joseph? And he went, no, it was another one. I'm not supposed to have told you that.
No, but somebody asked Edward Russell later on, and he said it wasn't Patterson Joseph, but it was another black actor.
All right, so yes, it's not just a mix-up. That does actually.
So 40 years' time, we'll find out who that was.
Yeah. So to your actual question, the most Doctor Whoist thing about it is the cast. These are all the people who would have starred in a BBC homemade Doctor Who. It's the Julie T. Wallace episode. It's Earl Cameron. All of these, you just read out the cast list, and that's casting a series of Doctor Who. These are all the people you want playing your fruity aliens.
Absolutely. So is Patterson Joseph Jackson the obvious Doctor Who replacement, and are there any others in this show?
When they announced the show was coming back, Patterson Joseph was the actor that I wanted to play the part before they announced Christopher Eccleston. I mean, obviously, Doctor Who is in it, a.k.a. Peter Capaldi.
Indeed.
Not that you know from the box. Very odd.
I know. But watching it as a kid, I just wanted Patterson Joseph to be the Doctor. I never would have thought that the guy playing Angel Islington would end up one day being the Doctor. But I guess that's acting, isn't it? Actors acting.
There's also this thing of Laura Fraser, who plays Daw. At the time, I wouldn't have thought she was a very Doctor-y actor, but in terms of the way into the world and her sort of frantic energy, like she's got a bit more of a new series Doctor vibe to her, I think. And
Yeah.
Richard Mayhew is very much the companion character, if we're sort of using that Rose analogy. So I think I could have actually seen. Obviously, we would have all lost our shit if they'd cast a lady as Doctor Who in the 90s, but that would change.
But and she's one of those people who's just gone on to have an absolutely stellar career. Not much happened to him, I don't think. The guy did it. But yeah, she's done all sorts. Obviously, culminating as Kane in Orphan 55 in 2020.
Her greatest role.
Which is obviously, yeah. I mean, apparently she was in Better Call Saul. I don't know, some little obscure American thing, I guess.
I just pulled up Gary Bakewell's IMDb, and his last 2 credits are Doctor Who: The Monthly Adventures, Big Finish, and Gallifrey, Big Finish. He didn't go on too much, but I think he's
good. No complaints about him. Yeah.
What do you think of the way Neil Gaiman uses London Below and his iconography?
I really hate to use this wanky term, but it feels like IP in the sense that you sit down and watch this and you think, oh, there's clearly, 10 novels already that this is based on, or, a comic strip that's been going for a couple of years, or there's got to be something behind this that's informing this, because TV shows with this amount of lore and this much of a well-realized world that's been built and feels lived in straight away, it just doesn't really happen. I can't really think of a comparable show that's got this amazing concept, and also the fact that there wasn't really anything done with it afterwards, because London Below and the idea of another fantastical London, which isn't necessarily new. There are quite a few different takes on that. It's his equivalent to Hogwarts in a way, that you would think, surely there's, years and years of material in this.
It blew my mind that the novel was a novelization written after the fact.
And they only got around to doing a graphic novel a few years ago, from when he's Mr. Graphic Novel.
Yeah. So what about you, Pete? What do you think of this London Below?
It's a world of puns. It's like it was just there waiting to be done, and kind of, I suppose it's been done. Well, has it been done before? I don't know. It just to me, it just epitomizes that mid-90s era of everything's going to be a bit postmodern now, which we've kind of started in the 80s, but just to a much greater extent. And the idea that it's science fiction, but also a bit, it's magic, basically, isn't it? It's a world that has already been built, that we're dropped into, with all these characters who know each other and have got legacies. Yeah, it absolutely doesn't start the way. Oh my God! Why now? I'm going to be. Can I use my first nowadays of this podcast? Why don't we do this nowadays? Why isn't there new? The last really innovative science fiction thing I can think of is The Fades, and that was about 10 years ago or more now.
Yeah, that was 2010.
That wasn't. Yeah, God. Because that wasn't just, here's some vampires, here's some werewolves, here's a vampire that lives with a werewolf, here's some zombies. It actually, that's the most Neverwhere-ish thing subsequently, The Fades, that I can think of in terms of trying to do that same thing of just create. This is a whole new thing, whole new rules.
As a tangent here, Alan Moore has just started to write a trilogy of books, the first of which came out, I think, last year. And it's called The Great When. And it's about, again, another alternative London that lives alongside our one. And it's essentially where all of the imagination and ideas relating to a city live. So it's full of gods, but gods of really abstract ideas like, violence, and there are deities that aren't religious deities, but are the deities of what people think other cultures worship. So it's this weird kind of trippy mushroom LSD, Neverwhere type place that you can pass into. And the first of the books is set just after the Second World War. And I think that the next two are going to be set during different eras in London. And it's a great book. I recommend it. He's an amazing prose writer, and it's very funny and very interesting. And at the end of that book, he says that he owes a lot of his debt to other great writers that have written about London in a slightly fantastical way. And he mentions Ian Sinclair, but I have no idea what books he's written relating to it. But I think Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman have collaborated maybe before, or they were kind of comics buddies at a time. I think
Yeah,
there might have
yeah.
been some collaboration, or at least like a friendship there. So that's the only thing I can recommend now that is doing a similar thing. And it's
Is there a bit of it in Rivers of London?
yes, yeah. So there's Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London as well.
How magical is that? I've heard of it, but I don't really. Yeah.
So Rivers of London is basically if there was like a wizard police force. So it's a London copper learns about these particular dark arts of magic that are then used to help and try and contain outbreaks of magic in the city. And there are tribes relating to the rivers of London. So there are people that guard and inhabit, the River Fleet, and that's the only river in London, and Thames and some of the others. I mean, I live here. I don't know all the rivers.
Yeah, that's just the truth.
Those are the big ones.
But that's
Doctor Who has never mentioned any
The
others.
Haringey Canals.
But they're both great books. I think like Alan Moore's book is denser. Ben Aronovich's is a bit lighter, but they're both capable of doing. They both have a similar style in that they go from extremely funny to extremely horrific.
To give him a slightly tangential Who reference, I'm a little bit reminded of Faction Paradox's 11-Day Empire, of this whole sort of world that exists within a gap in history. It's not quite the same thing, but I'm looking for thematic links, so I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah, but also the Trap Street in Face the Raven, that's got huge vibes of, a hidden secret, fantastical London that's just out of sight. It's I think it's probably always been there in culture.
The idea came from a conversation between Gaiman and Lenny Henry, star of Spyfall and not famous for anything else. And it was supposed to be more...
I mean, it's good, but it's no Orphan 55.
It was supposed to be about tribes of homeless people in London, which of course it is, but that sort of played down and he wanted to make it more removed from reality in case young people attempted to emulate the characters and become homeless themselves, I guess, and form these street gangs, sort of possibly misinterpreting the audience the BBC Two had at the time. But, I like its use of London, and it almost is so obvious that like you were saying about it being IP, Jackson, it's like, actually, like, why has nobody done this before? Why is there not loads of stuff? And also, why did this not carry on? Because he said he had an idea for a sequel that never happened. There was a short story, there was a radio remake, but it was successful. You'd think there'd be a series of this every year for a few years.
Well, I found an interview with him where he was, I think it was on one of the commentaries, where basically when it came out, he wasn't happy with it, how it came onto TV. And was a bit disparaging of the way it was directed. There's an interview where he says, "Oh yeah, they just, they didn't know how to do it, so they dug up the blueprint of Doctor Who. Like it's a 6-part 25. Oh, it's some kind of science fiction thing." And he just sort of says, "Oh, they got some guy who'd been directing Vicar of Dibley to direct it and had no idea how to do special effects." And so they said to him, "Great, 6 more episodes, please. 6 more 25-minute episodes." And he said, "No, I'll write you a series of 45-minute episodes that you can shoot on film." Right. And they just said, Then they said, "No, you're all right. We've not got the money for that." So that was what, he said he'd only do a second series if they increased the budget, and they wouldn't.
Oh, that's a shame.
Because it tees it up, doesn't it? At the end, it really tees it up with him going off to research. Yeah.
Do you think also, because this is probably this might be the same year or a year or two before the first Harry Potter book comes out, do you think it's kind of missing the dawn of, this fantasy franchise stuff? There might be worth investing in. It feels like it kind of just missed that era.
Yeah, that's not gone super mainstream, is it? It's still something in the cool periphery.
Yeah, it's also that thing of like, why did it take so long for Discworld to get a series? And I guess it's because fantasy and stuff like that is seen as impossibly expensive.
And to be fair, I mean, this does have some of the most Doctor Who-ish things in this are, on the one hand, Croup and Vandermeer. Have I got their names right?
Yeah.
The villains are just straight out of a Robert Holmes. They are #Holmesian double act.
I believe they're directly inspired by a childhood memory that he has of Fury from the Deep. So it's not quite Holmes. It's your classic Pemberton double act.
That's going deep. Yeah. Which probably did inspire Robert Holmes to do his. Yeah. Or as or also Robert, just two characters doing good dialogue. He didn't actually invent that notion. But the grotesqueness of them combined with a really shit effect of a monster in the sewer, a big hairy monster in the sewer that's coming to get you, and it's a cow. Like, it's such a build up.
Someone's wet a cow down. Well, let's talk about the production values. Neil Gaiman's, as Pete's pointed out, has sort of been on record saying he wasn't happy with it. Does it work? Does it stand up? How do we feel about it?
I think it looks great, apart from one or two big clangers. I think even though it's still that, videotape footage that doesn't look that dissimilar to how a sitcom is shot, everybody is on the same page in terms of costume, lighting, set design, or how they deal with the location shoots. Everybody is working from the exact same, crib sheet. Everybody knows what they're doing. And so I just think it's great. And it's only those a few tiny things that let it down. And even the basic CSO special effects that they do are still really impressive in terms of there's a scene, I think it's in episode 4 or 5, where they're visiting, it's like a tribe of, 18th century women in a tube carriage. And they really convincingly portray, through the use of tube footage passing by, you really locate it and you go, oh, yeah, this is literally a tube carriage in between the tracks further down the tunnel. And it's just really cleverly done that they've really thought about geographically, what is this and how is this working? It's not just a bit of footage cut out and splodged on top of it.
I think you're right. It is weird to hear Gaiman go, oh, well, they just got whoever, the guy who did Vicar of Dibley, because it feels like everybody gives a shit and is really trying to make this good. We as Doctor Who fans know what it's like to see, especially in the 80s, a bunch of jobbing people be put on a television show and for them not to give a fuck about what they're doing. So here, everybody feels like they're trying. And
I've just noticed that the director, Dewey Williams, who went on to direct, he went on to direct Vicar of Dibley, absolutely fabulous, 1,000 episodes of Open Door Hours and My Family, but he directed Chef! A Lenny Henry sitcom around the same time, so that must have been the connection. Yeah.
So Pete, what do you think of the production values?
It's as good as TV was going to be in 1996, and it's not bad. It's not letting down 1996 TV. But I guess you do put it next to the TV movie with Paul McGann and £1 million being spaffed up a wall in Vancouver, and it does look. It doesn't look like that, And there was things like they were gonna, apparently when they shot it, the idea was to put one of those filmic filters over it in post that was briefly popular for a couple of years in the 90s. Be briefly ubiquitous, but then I remember they even put it on EastEnders for about 2 weeks, and points of view erupted and they took it off again. So they shot it with the intention of doing that, but then didn't do that. And there's a thing somewhere with the set director, I think it's one of the designers saying, I would not have painted that colour if it wasn't for the fact that I'd been told it was going to have a darkness filter put on it, and then they didn't put the darkness filter. So things like that. But that's nitpicking, really, particularly because I think it looks great. It's so stylish. The fact that it's all shot on video on location, mid-90s, it never looks like a home video the way, I think Silver Nemesis is a few years earlier, but that immediately springs to mind as one of those early video shoots, early small camera video shoots, as opposed to the big monster thing they had in the 70s. But there was a giant studio in a van. Yeah. But by the 80s, they'd got these smaller cameras, which is what I'm assuming were also being used on this in the 90s. And it doesn't feel filmic because it's telly. It's not trying to be a movie.
Yeah.
It's almost like watching someone do an escape room, but like a really good one, and the best one ever. Because the structure, it's like this week we're going to another pun.
Yeah.
It's to this and it's to that. And it's really unusual because it's not really there is the plot is so. I don't know the right terms because I didn't pay enough attention during English, but it's not quite linear enough. Well, it's sort of, people just, it is an A to B to C. In that respect, it is linear. That you go through 6 chambers. Here's one little story. Here's your next little bit of the story. Getting to meet all these characters, but ultimately, it's just she's got to run for her life, and the design does tie everything in really well. To have you've left 1990, the 1990s. We're not in an office looking at Windows 95 anymore. That's weird. That gave me a pang of I don't know what the right word is, but seeing people using Windows 1995 in a historical drama like this.
You could do a brilliant immersive experience like the War of the Worlds that we went to with Neverwhere if it was a bigger IP.
Yeah, built for it.
But I think the production values really work. And I think it's, as Jackson said, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. The lighting looks really good. And when I was 13 years old or whatever watching this, I wouldn't have noticed that it was shot on videotape. And I can understand why Neil Gaiman would be disappointed at the time. But now it's aged so much that we look back fondly at those videotape productions.
Yeah.
And it's what a lot of the stuff on BBC Two would have been like. Okay, as you say, there's a repeat of The Prisoner or Star Trek The Next Generation that's shot on film. But British television never looked like it was shot on film, even when it did. Even with things like Edge of Darkness, it's shot on film, but there's something about it that makes it still feel like those British production values, you know?
Yeah. I was really impressed, which this is something I didn't remember from watching it as a kid or a teenager, but what really impressed me this time was the title sequence, which is full of these really amazing images of like someone with this, haunting tribal mask sitting in, like a London Underground underpass or underground tunnel. And it's amazing because it reminds me of so much kind of weird fiction / fantasy literature of the time that had those types of covers, which is a kind of sepia tinted autumnal way of treating photographs and images and collaging them together. It reminded me a bit of the cover to House of Leaves, but it just was really amazing to see something that I've seen, a style of treating like genre imagery from fantasy books and weird fiction and all that other kind of stuff. Seeing it brought to life was quite amazing.
I was also really taken by the music this time. I was like, I wonder who did that. And it was Brian Eno.
Yes, that's right.
Hell.
Yeah, where do they get strings pulled? Was it Lenny Henry? Does Lenny Henry just know everyone? We could credit him with just being able to pick up the phone and get Brian Eno to come and do something like this because he's very well connected. So good man.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant score. And that, especially that theme music, it feels both otherworldly and also ancient at the same time, which is, the feel. He got the memo.
Yeah. That image that's on the front of the book and the not the most recent release, but other releases of the sort of a hand and a key by Dave McKean, who is the guy who did a lot of the covers for Gaiman's graphic novels that all have that style of. And again, I know because he did a Tori Amos picture disc in 1994. For God, again, that's a window through for me into this world. But it was strange that he didn't do the opening titles for this because it's got its own vibe that he could very easily plugged into. But the way that it is done is great.
So, what about the story? Because I guess that's the element the thing I most remember. And while I had a great time, it perhaps loses a bit of momentum towards the end. And it's interesting, Pete, to hear you talk about him wanting to do it in 45-minute chunks. I wonder whether there's a 4-episode, 45-minute version of this, which works a little better.
Yeah, it is very strange story in that it takes you on this journey, and he's just on one mystery door, and then each episode is basically ends with peril or whatever, but then next week you go into a different place. I did drift away. I did miss a couple of episodes when it was going out. It didn't actually so there's the test, isn't it? It didn't hook me enough to make me actually set the video. I just watched it when it happened to be on. But watching it now as a complete thing, also I wouldn't sit down to watch it. I don't mean in one go, but know that you've got it there to watch in installments at your own pleasure. It works much better because it is just like one. It's more like a novel than a TV show of episodes.
I do think that the kind of 30-minute adventure format does undo it a bit. As in, I was following it happily. It's a trip into a labyrinth, and the story is the themes and the story is all about the idea of the labyrinth. London is a labyrinth. There's a labyrinth beneath London that is this other London. And it kind of ends up spreading itself between too many ideas because you meet all these tribes, go to all these different places, meet these different cultures, and then it reaches a point where they go to Blackfriars, and he has to go through the ordeal, which is great. Like as an idea, it's great. It's a psychological ordeal, and it convinces you that you're just a raving homeless person on the London Underground, which is, which is like a horribly vivid analogy, what people are kind of afraid of becoming. And then after that, they're then told that there is then another labyrinth that they have to go into that's got the beast in it. And obviously it's the Minotaur, but it's not a Minotaur, it's just a bull that's not very threatening. And I think what undoes it is that they've spent the series building a picture of this whole other labyrinth that is London below. And then you've got the psychological labyrinth. And then you've got a bit of CSO where they say, oh, there's a labyrinth through here. And it's, a bit of a maze, and you're just waiting to see that bull that you've seen in every episode up until this point. And so it kind of undoes itself. The Blackfriars ordeal needs to happen at the end, or as well as that, they just don't have the budget to convey this whole other thing. Because I think the journey is great and enjoyable, but it's when it has to create a big spectacle to end it on, it keeps kind of fumbling a bit.
And what could be more Doctor Who than that, eh?
Yeah.
It's a 6-parter. Shit, we've got to write 2 more episodes. Yeah, he doesn't throw himself under the train. Yeah.
It's also this thing that the story wraps up about 10 minutes into episode 6, and then we get him going back to his normal life, which I get, and I think is a lovely ending when he rejects it and wants to go back. But we spend about 15 minutes in his normal life, and we've already spent 15 minutes at the we know what it's like. Like we don't need to see him. It's a 2 or 3 minute scene that you need to do that, but it's just they haven't quite got the pacing right in how to bring everything together 20 minutes into episode 6, which is where it should be, rather than 10. What do we think of future Doctor Who Peter Capaldi here? Being all young and evil.
Yeah, he's the scary man. I'm really surprised that he's not on the box.
Yeah.
Of the recent edition that came out 5 years ago or whatever. I mean, and because he's talked about all the way through as well, isn't he? He's built up to, and then gives an absolutely terrifying performance, but calm and quiet. Nothing like his Doctor or his or Malcolm Tucker. It's very funny to me that everyone I know who has watched this at the time, like at work, anyone who had seen it would say, "Oh, you know what? That Patterson Joseph, he'd make a good Doctor Who, wouldn't he?" While all the time the 12th Doctor is stood there being sort of eclipsed by him because he's so. Why would anyone that scary get the job of Doctor Who?
Absolutely. What about you, Jackson?
Well, he brings his bouffon.
He does.
He's got a big old bouffon. And he brings enormous sex cult energy in that white robe with that hair and that malevolent grin.
Yeah, that's not really big Doctor energy, is it?
Yeah. I mean, to go back to Patterson Joseph, the thing that he brings is that he's killed and then comes back to life. So there's that kind of, he's kind of almost regenerating in the show itself.
It's not just that he's quirky and charismatic with some with stagey Victorian mannerisms, but also cool in surprising ways. There's a bit where he's really callous about somebody's family all having been murdered, in a quippy kind of way, and it shocks you a bit. But in a way that showed that sort of doctorish. Will even have the Doctor doing that, but yeah.
I mean, you'd get Peter Capaldi's Doctor doing that in his first few episodes.
You would, wouldn't you? Yeah.
I had a false memory, actually, that the Marquis de Carabas turns out to be the villain of the piece, or the traitor, but obviously that's set up as a sort of a red herring in the end, and it's obviously Hunter who fills that role. So in my mind, I was always like, if you're trying to squint to make it look like Doctor Who, you can't, because Doctor Who's a baddie in this. After this aired, Doctor Who fans obviously went, well, Neil Gaiman should have run Doctor Who in the 90s. Do we think there was room for a Neil Gaiman run series of Doctor Who in 1997, for instance?
I don't think so. I think his style is too definitive that he doesn't have the breadth that Doctor Who needs to be a big success. I think he could write some really. I think he'd probably have had about a 50-50 hit rate if he was writing some Doctor Who's. That's my take. But this is this is something that Doctor like you're saying at the start, Jackson. That how solidly this arrives as a complete world, which is something that Doctor Who just can't be, because if Doctor Who isn't taking somewhere else, even when that world is the south of England for a year with season 7, the show's immediately itching to break out of it. So yeah, I think its strength and its solidity would stop Doctor Who from flying in the way that it needs to.
Well, I think it's true that if he's a world builder, Doctor Who isn't actually necessarily built for people that are all about lore and world building. I'm sure Lawrence Miles would disagree with us, but and as much as I love that, that's a whole different thing to the logistics of how you write Doctor Who as a TV show. One of the things that I loved most that Neil Gaiman did was his stage show called Ocean at the End of the Lane, and in a similar way that you guys have spoken how you kind of want Doctor Who of the 90s to be like this, that stage show was quite close to what a Doctor Who stage show should be, but we would never, as in if there was an official BBC licensed one, it would be, oh, well, you put the Cybermen up there and the Daleks, and then you have them all, battle each other.
It's called The Ultimate Adventure.
Yeah. This was just like a regular, creepy fantasy horror story in the 80s in the English countryside. And it had strong kind of 11th hour vibes, and I saw it 3 times. It was that good. And he steals a scene from Battlefield in there by Ben Aronovich.
Is it the manic laughing?
No. The character is told to stand in a circle of mushrooms, and then that turns into a spotlight, and then characters come to lure them out of the circle, and they have to resist it.
But that in itself...
It's not the garden centre bit.
No.
That in itself, I think, was stolen from The Devil Rides Out.
Ah, okay.
And I imagine that was pulled from some sort of witchcraft or like English mythology. But let's say it's from Battlefield, because that's where our cultural reference points end.
But
it's the text.
But what that stage show had and what Neverwhere has is that it takes the genre tropes that would be for children and for family audiences and gives it this kind of, but it's filtered through an adult lens. So in the stage show, it was about coming of age and being a 14-year-old boy or 14-year-old boy, and this demonic force takes on the shape of a new stepmother. But it's explicitly implied that, oh, this evil woman is sleeping with my dad, and it's about the son understanding that his dad is having this relationship with this demonic entity.
Relatable.
So, and in Neverwhere, you've got scenes where Dor will talk to a mouse, and it's got this very cuddly, cozy BBC Narnia vibe. And then in the next scene, someone's threatening someone with a like a razor blade, and someone's getting tortured. So he does have this. I know he wrote Coraline, which was for children, but he's not specifically a children's writer. He's more about taking these things that people have grown up with and giving them a slightly harsher adult edge.
Playing golf with toads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's Doctor Who fans being too literal and starved of Doctor Who. They go, this was like Doctor Who because this character's like the Doctor. I don't think you take someone like Neil Gaiman and get him to go, okay, you've done this once on this show, now take on this previous existing thing. If you're going to do anything, you commission him to do series 2 of Neverwhere, not, oh, we'll get this guy to do Doctor Who. As I said on our last episode, Jackson, somebody like Stephen Gallagher was probably more suited to running Doctor Who in the 90s if there was a BBC version of it. And I don't think he's that interested, Neil Gaiman, to be honest, in playing in other people's sandbox. He probably is now. Probably if anybody offered him anything, he'd probably take it. But, this isn't that podcast. So I just don't see a world where that exists. But the similarities between the Marquis de Carabas and the Doctor are undeniable.
You make me think that this is the kind of thing that a 90s Doctor Who would have done a riff on one story. Like it would, do a story that's, when we get a story that's a bit like the Mummy's Tomb, and we get a story, whatever. This is the kind of genre that Doctor Who would spend 4 weeks dipping into in an ideal world.
Absolutely. Is there anything else we want to say on Neverwhere?
I think it's a must-watch thing. It definitely has it. Even if you don't like, I would say that someone who doesn't like Doctor Who even watch it. It's different. It's weird, but also as a Doctor Who fan, it is a really interesting glimpse of that 25-minute 6-episode serial being done by the BBC in the 90s. That's remarkable that 6 years after saying we can't do this anymore, they decided to do it. I mean, I guess it was it externally produced or whatever. It wasn't quite. They didn't. John Nathan Turner didn't get a go, sadly, at being its producer. Yeah, I just say you've got to watch it to see whether it works for you or not.
Absolutely. For me, it's the best thing that we've covered so far in this run of Doctor Who replacements, and it is something that I will revisit every 3 or 4 years and just give a spin, because it's a uniquely British, uniquely 90s thing that I'm so glad exists, and did when I was a starved Doctor Who fan. It did help replace the show a little bit.
I think it's exceptionally rare that TV shows get it this bang on straight away, as in just in terms of concept, premise and execution. Yes, it falls apart a bit at the end, but I think the first 3 or 4 episodes, at the very least, it's very unusual for something this fully formed to exist. So,
agreed.
I think it's great. I think it's brilliant.
Would you call it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander, Jackson?
A banger.
It's a banger from me too. What say you, Pete?
I'm going to triple banger it because, it's great. Yeah.
Amazing. A triple banger for Neverwhere. So, Pete, if people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm quite a mess on Blue Sky and popping up on the Trap One podcast from time to time. Nice to meet people out there.
Amazing. A little bit of housekeeping from me. Apparently, the podcast allows you to text into us, which is very nice, but it doesn't give us any chance of texting back. So thank you to the people who have texted in. But if you want to get in touch, please reach out on Blue Sky or X, or find me on Facebook. But I cannot respond to you. I'm so sorry. Jackson, you don't want to be found.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we'll be back next time with... We're going to do Goodnight, Sweetheart.
Yeah.
And we'll be joined by Mikey Smith for that one. But until then, I've been Dylan.
I've been Jackson.
I've been Pete.
And this has been Doctor Who Too Hot for TV.
I'm going off to Clapham now.